Imagine waking up in a room with no windows and realizing you cannot remember your own mother's face. Imagine the terrifying void where your childhood should be, and the realization that your entire identity has been surgically removed from your brain. This is not a nightmare, but the documented reality for those who cross the threshold of a place that does not officially exist on any map. Before we dive deep into the darkness of Site-99, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Global Mysteries HQ, and share this story to help us uncover the truths they want to keep buried. The story begins in the winter of 1994, when a young man named Elias Thorne was found wandering the edge of a remote forest in the Pacific Northwest. He was wearing a clinical white jumpsuit, and his feet were bleeding from miles of walking over jagged rocks. But his physical injuries were nothing compared to the state of his mind. When the local police questioned him, Elias could not provide his name, his age, or where he had come from. The only thing he kept repeating was a single number over and over again: 99. At first, the authorities thought he was a victim of a local crime, or perhaps a runaway from a psychiatric ward, but as they dug deeper, they realized that Elias Thorne had no digital footprint, no birth certificate, and no record of ever having existed in the United States. It was as if he had been born into the world as a fully grown man on that very morning. As the investigation into the identity of Elias stalled, a retired intelligence officer named Arthur Vance saw the news report and felt a cold shiver down his spine. Vance knew that number. For decades, rumors had circulated in the darkest corners of the intelligence community about a facility hidden beneath a mountain range so remote that even satellite imaging was periodically scrambled. They called it the memory sink, or more formally, Site-99. According to the whispers, this was where the government sent people who knew too much and where they perfected the art of the clean slate. It was a laboratory dedicated to the most horrific frontier of science, which is the total and permanent deletion of human memory. Vance began his own private investigation, fueled by the guilt of things he had seen during his own career. He tracked down the coordinates of the last known location associated with the mystery of Elias. What he found was a perimeter of high-tension wires and warning signs that cited lethal force, but there was no base visible on the surface. Everything was subterranean. The facility was built deep into the granite bedrock designed to withstand a nuclear strike, but its true purpose was much more sinister than defense. It was a psychological meat grinder. Vance managed to obtain a series of leaked audio logs from a whistleblower who had worked as a junior technician at the site before he too vanished. The logs described a process called neural scrubbing. In these recordings, the technician's voice is shaking as he explains that the brain is like a hard drive that can be formatted. They found a way to target the hippocampus with localized electromagnetic pulses that would essentially burn away specific synaptic pathways. At first, they were only removing traumatic memories from soldiers returning from war, but the project quickly spiraled into something far more dark. The handlers at Site-99 realized that if you could remove a man's memory, you could rebuild him into anything you wanted. You could create the perfect spy, a man who literally could not betray his country because he didn't even know what his country was. But the experiments didn't stop with soldiers. The logs mentioned the disappearance of dozens of homeless people and political dissidents from across the globe. These were people whose absence would not cause a public outcry. They were brought to Site-99 in blacked-out transport vehicles and assigned numbers. Elias Thorne was likely Subject 82. The logs described how the subjects were kept in a state of constant sensory deprivation to break their grip on reality before the scrubbing began. They would be forced to watch loops of flickering lights while high-frequency tones played in their ears for 72 hours straight. By the time they reached the operating table, their minds were already begging for the void. One of the most disturbing revelations in the whistleblower's files was the mention of the cabinet. This was a massive server room located in the lowest level of Site 99, where the deleted memories were supposedly stored in a digital format. The scientists weren't just erasing lives, they were harvesting them. They believed that by studying the collective memories of thousands of people, they could map the human consciousness and eventually find a way to upload new memories. Imagine being able to learn a new language or a complex skill in seconds simply by having someone else's memory of that skill injected into your brain. But the cost of this advancement was the total destruction of the donor's soul. As Vance pushed closer to the truth, he realized that the facility was still very much active. He found evidence of recent supply chains moving massive amounts of liquid nitrogen to the coordinates, which is a chemical used to cool the massive supercomputers required for neural mapping. He also discovered that the local town near the forest where Elias was found had a statistically impossible rate of early-onset Alzheimer's and dementia. It was as if the experiments were leaking into the local population, or perhaps the scientists were using the townspeople as a control group for their memory suppression aerosols. The psychological tension of the story reaches its peak when Vance finally receives a package from an anonymous source containing a single photograph. It shows a group of scientists standing in front of the entrance to Site 99, and in the center of the group is a man who looks exactly like Elias Thorne, but he is wearing a lab coat and holding a clipboard. The realization hits like a physical blow. Elias wasn't a victim being experimented on. He was the lead scientist who had perhaps stumbled upon a truth so horrific that he chose to perform the scrubbing procedure on himself. He had committed the ultimate act of self-erasure to escape the guilt of what he had created. The ethical questions surrounding Site 99 are profound. If you lose your memories, are you still the same person? Is our identity nothing more than a collection of stories we tell ourselves about our past? If those stories are taken away, what is left behind? The victims at Site 99 were walking ghosts, moving through a world they no longer recognized, inhabited by people they no longer knew they loved. They were the ultimate casualties of a war on the human spirit. In the final months of his life, Arthur Vance became convinced that the technology developed at Site 99 had already been deployed on a mass scale. He pointed to the phenomenon of the Mandela effect and the strange gaps in public memory as evidence that the memory sink had gone mobile. He believed that certain events in our history are being systematically scrubbed from the collective consciousness of the world, and that we are all living in a state of managed amnesia. He died in a mysterious house fire before he could publish his final findings, leaving behind only a trail of questions and the chilling legend of the Forbidden Laboratory. The story of Site 99 ends not with a bang, but with a terrifying silence. It is the silence of a man who looks into the mirror and does not recognize the eyes staring back at him. It is the realization that everything you believe to be true about your life could be a manufactured lie designed to keep you compliant and quiet. The most powerful weapon in the world isn't a bomb or a virus. It is the ability to make a person forget who they are. If you can control the past, you can control the future. And at Site 99, the past is something that can be deleted with the flick of a switch. As we conclude this investigation into the dark heart of memory manipulation, we must ask ourselves what we would do if we discovered our own memories were not our own. The horror of Site 99 is not just in the needles and the machines, but in the fragile nature of the human mind. We are the architects of our own reality, but those architects can be evicted. If you found this journey into the forbidden zones of the mind compelling, please like this video and subscribe to Global Mysteries HQ for more cinematic explorations into the world's most guarded secrets. Share this video with those who value the truth, because the only way to protect our memories is to never forget that they are under attack. Stay curious and stay vigilant.